It's 10 p.m. and I'm still at a client's office, staring at a process that I'm redesigning in Microsoft Visio. I've been working on it since 6 p.m. and I believe that if I just fix a few more things, it will produce something far better and my clients, my company, everyone will be happy. It's now midnight and I've not only finished redesigning the whole process flow, I've created a presentation deck too, because I thought it would be a great idea to present some slides alongside it too. By 2 a.m, PowerPoint crashes and I lose most of the work anyway. I go home exhausted, questioning whether all this effort and striving I'm doing is even worth it. The presentation deck was a nice addition, but it wasn't necessary. And no one asked for it. And why did I even start a new task at 6 p.m. when I should have been on my way home at that time? Here's the truth. Working late, plus all those extra hours, did not increase the value of what I had done at all. It only increased my overwhelm and my exhaustion. That was the night I realized I'd been completely overlooking something called the law of diminishing returns. If you're someone who keeps thinking, 1 more hour will finally make this good enough, this video is for you. I'm going to show you how to use the law of diminishing returns to get out of overwork spirals. And I'm going to share 3 practical tactics for this, including 3 simple reflective questions that you can start using this week. So, in case you're thinking, what on earth is Louise talking about? The law of what? Let me explain what the law of diminishing returns is briefly. It sounds complicated, but the idea is very simple. Basically, if you keep putting more and more effort into just one part of something, the additional benefits you get from that effort will slowly get smaller. Think of it like this. Imagine you're trying to grow a plant. If you keep adding more and more water, but don't give it any more sunlight or good soil, at some point, adding more water won't help it grow much. In fact, it might even hurt it. You get less extra growth for each extra cup of water you add. In other words, there's a sweet spot where you adding more time or more effort to something still helps. But if you keep going past that sweet spot, it won't help much and might even make things worse. In your own life, this is what happens when you overwork or overextend. Your first hour of focus moves things ahead in a beneficial way. But by the 5th hour, you're drained and probably making improvements that barely change the impact and that no one will notice or care about. So now you've not only wasted time, but your energy and well-being suffer too, because this overwork steals recovery and restoration time. It dulls your thinking and slowly turns meaningful work into pressure and resentment. So over time, that means more burnout for you, slower progress, and a life organized around effort instead of actual impact. A quick question for you. Do you ever catch yourself still working on something long after you know you should have stopped? Let me know in the comments. And if you've watched this far and identify with anything I've shared, please don't be hard on yourself. I've been there too, but I found my way out of it. And I've helped my clients do the same. So I hope that sharing this insight with you helps. Remember that late night I told you about at the start? The first hour I spent on that process flow moved it forward. By 10 p.m, maybe I was adding some value still, but by 2 a.m, I wasn't making it any better. I was just making it different. Overachievers and people with perfectionistic traits often miss this point. You assume that if you give more, you'll always get more. But past a certain point, more effort does not mean more impact or even more appreciation from people either. It just means more exhaustion for you, which can heighten anxiety and erode your clarity and peace. That is why I started using the law of diminishing returns as my decision-making filter and my exit route from overwork. Instead of asking, have I done everything? I started asking, have I done what's necessary? That fundamental question helped me see whether I was subconsciously chasing approval and acceptance through my efforts or actually changing the outcome in a meaningful way. This became what I call the done meter. It consists of 3 core tactics, and I'm going to share them with you today. The first tactic is this: before you start any new project or piece of work, decide what your intended impact cutoff is. Most people tell perfectionists to just aim for good enough. They say, good enough is better than perfect. But if you care about doing things well, and you hold yourself to high standards, that can sound like you're not even meant to try at all. So over here, instead of good enough, we talk about intended impact. This means having a clear picture of the change or result you want your work to create. Your intended impact will vary depending on the project or task too. But the first thing to help you define it is what is absolutely necessary. This means stripping away all the extras and focusing only on the few essential things that must work to solve the main problem. You can call this your minimum viable version too, which I spoke about in my last video, 5 tactics to stop feeling behind and finally see your progress. I'll leave the link to that in the description box below in case you missed it. I suggest writing down what is absolutely necessary and putting it somewhere visible so you can keep referring back to it. For instance, it could be something like, my minimum version is a 1-hour meeting with just a whiteboard. The only goal is to agree on our top 3 priorities for next week. No fancy slides or catering are needed for this minimum viable version. The next thing to establish after what is absolutely necessary is whether you have an end user, client, or customer for what you're working on. For example, if you're developing a presentation, that would be the people who will be in the room, your audience. Once you've identified your client, customer, end user, audience, whatever it is, you need to be really clear on what matters to them. Because overachievers and perfectionists often spend hours perfecting details that matter to them or matter to someone who once critiqued them harshly in their past, but often not to anyone in their current situation or their current client or customer. Getting very clear and focusing on your audience's needs ultimately helps you in the long run because it helps to limit overthinking and can stop you getting in your own way. So identify what is actually most important and non-negotiable for your audience or your client and customer. You can do this by getting them on a phone call, a video consultation, or you can even discuss it with them via email. The way you do it doesn't matter, but the critical thing to remember is that listening is key here. Sometimes we hear what we want to hear and can make assumptions. Your goal is to get to the core of what's most important, then simplify it into a few bullet points and relay it back to them. For example, you could try asking, by the end of this project or task, what's the one thing this must achieve for you to feel it was worth your time? The third and final thing to establish as part of your intended impact is what you personally want to achieve from the work. And this has nothing to do with approval, validation, or external appreciation. This one is a little more selfish. Capture what you want to get out of it for yourself, for your business or your career. For instance, is there a skill you want to develop? Are there testimonials or reviews you want to showcase by the end of the project or task? Or is there a way you want this piece of work to stretch you? Once you've identified your intended impact, which is the bare minimum and absolute necessary results and outcomes the project must deliver, write it all down in a short paragraph and make it visible. Refer back to it as you work so you don't drift into prioritizing low impact details. When you've met the standard you set in your intended impact, that's your cue to stop. From that point on, any extra polish or refinements have to justify themselves. I had a client once who was reworking an internal presentation. Before this, her subconscious standard was it needs to be perfect, which meant she kept adding more slides, more graphs, and more bullet points. But once we identified what her intended impact was and simplified it into a few sentences, she cut the deck in half and finished it 2 days earlier than she had planned. And this gave her mental and emotional space to walk into the meeting calm and confident instead of panicking. That's the benefit of intended impact. It doesn't just give you a clear finish line, it gives you a superior and intentional objective beyond perfection that serves as a guide for you. If any of this has resonated so far, my newsletter Excellence and Ease is where we keep the conversation going. It's a monthly home for overachievers, perfectionists, and the burned out who want to create, lead, and live with alignment. So I'll leave the link to join that below. But even with a better definition and complete clarity on what is most essential, you can still turn a 1-hour task into an 8-hour marathon. So the second tactic is about time, creating a diminishing returns timer to decide up front how much this project is really worth based on its intended impact that you would have just identified. Instead of worrying about how you're going to find time to do this work, ask, given the impact this needs to have, how much of my time is it actually worth? Then time box it. For example, you might decide this piece of work is worth 2 hours. If you time box those 2 hours and you still haven't finished when that time is up, pause and do an intended impact check by asking, if I put any more time into this, will it meaningfully move me closer to my intended impact? And only continue if the answer to that is yes, and the extra time can genuinely be justified. When the time is up, you can also do what I call a planned inaction experiment. This means you deliberately stop, save your work, and step away, rather than slipping into overwork spirals that may not actually be needed. The experiment is, when the time you've estimated is up, what happens if putting in more time and effort was not your next move? Sometimes by doing this, I notice that someone else solves part of the problem just by me stepping back and creating space, just doing nothing. Or I realize that I misjudged its intended impact and I need to go back and review it. I also discover other things that could help besides putting in more time and effort. So if we go back to the plant example from the beginning of this video, if the project you're working on is the plant and your time and effort are the water, maybe what it really needs at this point is more sunlight, like clarity, feedback, or visibility. It could also need better soil, such as a clearer brief, better tools, and more support. These planned inaction experiments really help to uncover this because the space gives you regained clarity and a broader perspective, so you can solve problems without compromising your well-being or always just defaulting to overwork. One of my clients tried this with a report she'd already spent hours on. Instead of pushing through another late night, she just stopped. She sent the draft to a colleague and asked for 15 minutes of feedback. And those 15 minutes of feedback did more to improve the report than the 3 hours she would have poured into it. What helped her with this was deciding upfront how much time that task was worth. Yes, it's true that estimating a task can be hard, especially when you've not started it yet. But remember here, you're not predicting how long it will take you. You're deciding what it's worth based on the impact the work needs to have, which you've already established at the start. This gives you a critical boundary to work within. But even with a clear time boundary, the perfectionist and overachiever brain can still move the goalpost. So this is where the third tactic comes in. The third and final tactic for your done meter is to define what your best is right now and the price you will not pay to go beyond that. This means getting honest about what you can give and what you're willing to give in this season of your life. Consider things such as your current mental and emotional state, other competing priorities you have at the moment, and the skills, resources, and support you actually have at your disposal. It also means deciding what can be improved over time, so it just doesn't really need full refinement right now. In my video, The Hidden Ways Your Environment Makes You Procrastinate, I talk about being attuned to the times and seasons you're in. I'll link that below. For you, it might be that you've recently recovered from a surgery, perhaps, or maybe you've just started a new job or a business and you're still learning the ropes. Whatever it is, name it. Then write down something like, given everything else that I have going on at the moment, what is my best that I can give right now for this piece of work? Then linking back to tactic number 2, how does that change the time investment I estimate it's worth? Finally, decide what is outside your well-being boundary, the well-being price you are not willing to pay to achieve your intended impact. For example, it could be skipping sleep or cancelling your walks that you normally go on, or repeatedly missing valuable time with people you love. Bake these non-negotiable boundaries into your time estimate and the way you approach the project or task so that your best considers you as a human being, not just what you produce. I saw this play out with a client who just returned to work after having her second baby. She had a big strategy document to produce, and her old definition of best was basically stay late, polish every sentence, and respond to every comment the same day. Together, we redefined her best as a clear, accurate first version that moves the project forward, created within my core working hours, while still sleeping and doing nursery pickups. The result of this was that the document went out on time, her stakeholders were happy, and she still had bandwidth to be present at home. Without this tactic, she would have literally pushed past her limits, turned in roughly the same quality of work, but paid for it with exhaustion and resentment. That's the benefit of this third tactic. It protects you from treating self-sacrifice as a performance standard, and it teaches you that your true best does not damage your health or what matters to you most, yet ensures you still achieve your intended impact. The truth is, not only is perfection unattainable, but the human perspective of perfection is so subjective and always shifting. You'll harm yourself trying to chase it because perfection lives outside of your control. Like I tell my clients, there is always more that can be done. There will always be more that can be done. But the goal isn't to do everything that's possible. It's to achieve the impact you intend, and they are not the same thing. It's to be clear on what the non-negotiable necessary thing is and make decisions about your time and effort investments based on all of these factors. Doing what's necessary and most impactful frees up your time to actually experience what matters most to you in life. This is why clarity and alignment are so important for perfectionists, overachievers, and the burned out, because they reconnect you to who you are and what you actually want, so that you can see what's about getting approval and validation versus what isn't. To explore that further, I suggest watching my video, How to Pursue Excellence Without Losing Yourself, next. But in the meantime, remember, harness, don't hate your standards, so you can live a life of excellence with ease.